Hey everybody, welcome to today's edition of our Dynasty Spotlight. My name is Jonathan. I'm one of the commissioners here at Masters Fantasy Leagues, joined by two of our draft coordinators, two friends of mine, and two guys that I go to anytime I need some help with some fantasy football advice, especially when it comes to some of these incoming prospects. One thing I wanted to say before we started, we do have over 600 Dynasty Leagues here at Masters Fantasy Leagues. We've never folded a single one. If you're looking for a place to play Dynasty, you don't want to worry about your team not being here in 3 to 4 years, here's a place to come play. Let's jump right into it though with today's prospects. It's going to be Jaylen Waddle, Alabama. And I just want to bring this up. One of the things I wrote down his size again, 5'10", 182 pounds. What's up with these Alabama receivers, man?
I mean, I feel like that's becoming more of a prototypical receiver build these days. I mean, you've seen guys like Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham. I'm just thinking there's been a ton of guys lately that 5'10", 5'11", a little on the lighter side. And I think Waddle has a good frame that he can get a little bigger too. Whereas like a guy like Devontae Smith that we've talked about, he's been thin for 4 years and he still hasn't really gotten any thicker. But either way, I mean, Jaylen Waddle is a prospect. It's funny too because this was the guy that everybody was talking about before the season, and his injury kind of opened up the door for Devontae Smith a little bit. Waddle though he's definitely a little more explosive, more of that speed kind of guy. Doesn't have as great of size as Devontae Smith does, but I don't think that's really going to hurt him. I think he's got really good route running. This was the first time we really got to see him with a full workload since they had so many talented guys in the past. This was his first year where he really got to show off, and he did just that. I mean, he's got a lot of really good parts to his game that I think will translate immediately. And, good hands, good route running. And then, like I said, that speed is where he's going to be separated from a lot of the guys in this draft. And, if he can stay healthy, which, we saw him get banged up this year, the sky's the limit for this guy. He's a special talent for sure, and I'm looking forward to see where he ends up.
Yeah, as you said, broken ankle. I was reading today, it looks like probably going to miss the Notre Dame game.
My heart sank when they were like, maybe Waddle will play. He might be back. I was like, oh, God, please, come on.
Yeah, that was good. Like, how happy are you that he's not playing?
Oh, very happy. Very happy he's not playing. Smith's enough to worry about.
Yeah.
And Najee.
So I think that's a great segue for my pro player comp form talking about Notre Dame is maybe a Will Fuller type. A lot of people want to throw out the Tyreek Hill comparison anytime you've got a dynamic player like Jaylen Waddle is, but I just think that's such a steep comparison. That's really, Tyreek Hill is just such a unique player. We really haven't seen anyone exactly like him. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe Will Fuller is a little more of a safer comparison. Jaylen Waddle's the real deal. He's got next level playmaking ability. The dude can fly, runs really nice routes too, so a lot to be excited about. But it's tough. I feel like we've seen a lot of these guys recently, and they don't always. Even Henry Ruggs last year from Alabama. He had a okay rookie year, but from a fantasy perspective, just still a lot of meat left on the bone. We wanted a lot more out of them. So, although I think they're a great addition to any NFL team, I don't know about your fantasy rookie draft. They're necessarily the perfect pick, but an exciting prospect for sure, and I love to watch him play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely.
And I just got to ask, did you compare him to Fuller because of his broken ankle already?
He's got no hamstring issues though.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and you said something earlier that stuck out with me ever since you said it, like Alabama open. And I had never heard that before. I do worry about some of these guys. I know 5'10", 182 pounds. It's working great for him at Alabama. You step up to the next level, I do worry about that size.
And not only that, to just the lack of talent around him. You look at Alabama's receiving corps last year. That's what they had: Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Jaylen Waddle. No wonder all these guys are open. How are you going to guard all of them?
Right.
But then, you stick Henry Ruggs on an Oakland team, and all of a sudden it's not so hard to, keep them under wraps if you're an NFL defense. So I worry more so about, at Alabama, you just got so much talent around you. It's easy to, just break free and have those, long touchdowns and all that. But still an exciting prospect, and I like the player for sure.
Well, hopefully Notre Dame can figure out how to guard some of these guys.
Yes, sir.
My Buckeyes can do the same, and I really hope we meet.
Oh boy, it's going to be very interesting.
Yes, it will be. All right, guys, going to move on to the next question here. Some possible NFL destinations, and maybe even your dream scenario for where you'd like to see Jaylen Waddle go. Best case for him to produce as a pro and on your fantasy team.
So my dream scenario / best case scenario kind of fits in right with my pro player comp around like the NFL trade rumors, and we heard about the Packers trying to go get Will Fuller around the trade deadline. I think Jaylen Waddle would be really exciting in Green Bay to be a number 2 to Devontae Adams, because I really don't think Jaylen Waddle is like a standalone number 1, but I think he's an amazing number 2, can stretch the field, make big plays, win in the slot as well and some underneath routes, but I would prefer him to get drafted somewhere where there's already an established number 1 and he can just be the big play number 2 guy.
Makes perfect sense. And what's Green Bay's coach name?
Matt LaFleur.
Matt LaFleur. Yeah. Somebody please tell that to LaFleur. I was thinking about that earlier today, looking at the Packers. Not to get off topic, but they locked up, home field throughout the playoffs. Why didn't he go get a little help for him? It still drives me crazy.
I don't know.
Neither here nor there. I'm sorry, did you have a possible?
No, I actually, the Packers was my spot.
Yeah, that's a great scenario for any receiver, but definitely for a guy you don't think that's a true number 1. Yeah. I actually love that spot. Good stuff, man. Draft stock, with that in mind, upcoming rookie dynasty drafts, and let's just use the Packers.
Yeah.
He gets drafted to Green Bay. Where would you consider taking him?
I mean, if he did end up in Green Bay, I think we'd see, he probably crack top 6, maybe even like 5th pick. I'm thinking that's such a good situation, even with the injury. I think he probably would have been a little higher rated had he played this whole season anyway, so I think that's probably where he'd end up. If he doesn't end up in Green Bay, probably late 1st is probably what I'm thinking. Maybe even getting into the early 2nd range, but he's got a lot of upside. I'll give him that. And no matter where he ends up, he's going to have that big play potential, so that's always huge.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I'd go late 1st as well. I definitely think, with some of the hype around Green Bay, he definitely could slide up to the mid-1st. But even that, in a perfect situation, that's still a little too high for me. I'm just looking back at this last year group wide receivers, and we saw Ruggs going, mid to late 1st in a lot of leagues, and guys like Justin Jefferson and Brandon Ayuk going after him. And at the end of the day, obviously Justin Jefferson had a phenomenal rookie year. Ayuk did as well. I just don't know if the speedsters are necessarily the best fantasy asset, so I would look for some of the more complete, well-rounded receivers over the speedsters. But a perfect scenario like Green Bay is intriguing, but it's risky.
Yeah, the CBS mock draft today had him round 1, pick 18 to Indy. T.Y. Hilton on his last year of his contract, somewhere they had to slide into. But you brought up Ruggs, so that was the question I was going to ask. Without knowing where Jaylen Waddle's going, you pull the trigger on Waddle for Ruggs now?
That's tough. I might hold on to Ruggs actually over Waddle.
I really like Ruggs as a prospect still, and I think you mentioned Ayuk, Ruggs, and Justin Jefferson. I think the only difference there is Ruggs was the only one that didn't have an established number 1 there already,
right,
or an established receiver, period.
Right.
Ruggs was kind of expected to come in, and it was Waller really was their only legit weapon, and he had to kind of come in and be the guy is what they were hoping, and he hasn't been that yet, but I think that'll, we'll see him develop into that kind of role. Whereas Jefferson and Ayuk could come in and, Debo took a lot. I know Debo was banged up, and Ayuk didn't really have that luxury as much this year. But Jefferson too, with Thielen, that opens a lot, makes it a lot easier to produce in your first year. So I think Waddle, you could see a really good first year for him if he ends up in a place like Green Bay, because he doesn't have to carry the load as the number 1 guy like Ruggs had to try to do.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot actually, and that's kind of why I do prefer him to go somewhere where he's not the number 1, because I actually think the less talented the receiver room is, the harder it is on rookie receivers for sure.
Right, and then I'm thinking about these 4 Alabama wide receivers. Got Ruggs and Judy last year, Devontae. Is he tier 4 out of that group?
I think so. We're saying Ruggs, Judy, Devontae. Yeah, I would take him 4th.
I think so too, and I really like him too.
Right, yeah,
I think he's a little better than we'd be giving him credit for by saying he's the 4th of those guys so easily. But
right, they're all uber talented.
Right.
Okay, good stuff, guys. Last question, Dynasty Football Outlook. We're talking everything Dynasty Football. I want to know if this guy's going to be around in 3 to 5 years. Will we still be talking about him?
So, I do think we'll still be talking about him, but I almost feel like he's going to, and not in a bad way, I know this word just has such a negative, I feel like he's going to be a little bit like a bust real early on, kind of like some of these other young speedsters. But then I think, maybe around year 3 or 4, he kind of has a couple boom years and then puts together, a string of viable fantasy years. But I just feel like he might not hit right away. And that frustrates a lot of fantasy players.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Good stuff. And this could actually be a weird player comp. Maybe it doesn't even make sense. Just listen to you guys talk, I kind of thought of Randall Cobb for some reason.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
I like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thanks so much for listening. That's going to wrap up today's episode. If you could hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. Tell us who you'd like for us to do on our next Dynasty Spotlight series. We'd love to have you come be a part of the Masters family. Thanks so much for listening.